All right, take it away, Bruce.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to an APMM meetup on the Apollo electric spray painting system. Um, at a virtual conference we had a couple years ago, Jen demonstrated this as part of her presentation of where she was working. And a lot of us got really excited and wanted to learn more. So she got together with the father-son team of John and Jonathan Derrick at Apollo to do a demonstration and talk us through how this works. So I'll let you three introduce yourselves and then run with it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. My name is John Derrick. I'm sitting here in the middle. I'm the older John. And we basically have a family-owned business that we started in 1966, where we specialize in just manufacturing HVLP, high volume, low pressure electric painting systems. So we don't make conventional systems, we don't make airless, we don't make any other type of painting system. Our focus is completely 100% on building turbine systems. And so everything that we do as a company is designed around making these systems the very best they can, not only in performance, but longevity and quality as well. And that's really, I think, what sets us apart. So we're a small family-owned business. I've been running the business for 25 years now. My father started the business back in the 60s. And my son here, Jonathan, to my right, is now working with us, and he does all of our marketing and that for us too. So we're very, I've grown up in this business. My son has grown up in this business, and this is, this is a core business for us. This is not just a job. This is something we take very seriously and passionate. Yeah, I think that'll come across in the way I talk over the course of our presentation here. But you'll see that come on the ground because, when I build something, I want it to, has my name on it, basically. A lot of people affectionately call me Mr. Apollo. And I take that very seriously. So building that quality into our products and making the very best performing products is what is the core of our business. So thank you very much for having us here today. I'm really honored to be part of this group. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Shorb. Most of you guys know me for the past, 15 years. It's probably been more than that, but so I am working for ProTech Models here in Houston, and we specialize in a lot of aerospace projects right now, and 3D printing. So we have we have a Stratasys 900 that's available for printing, two 450s, and a couple of resin printers that are available, some professional resin printers. And so we try and do as much as we can in-house. We work with other shops that don't have the 3D printing capability. And we try and be as supportive as we can in the model making and fabricating community here in Houston.
I'm Jonathan, work for Apollo, like John mentioned earlier. I do marketing. So if you guys want to stay in touch with us after this presentation, we'd love to connect with all of you guys personally. So reach out to me at Apollo Sprayers HVLP on social media. We'd like to stay in touch. So thanks for having us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of our presentation today.
So we'll just roll.
Silence.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay. So what we've put together today is a short demonstration video, and we have available here right now all of the technical information that you could possibly want to know, and some of the personal experiences that I've had with using this system. And so I can kind of help answer any questions or concerns from the model making aspect, ways that we can incorporate this system into our shops, into our standalone shops, into our corporate shops, into our garage workshops. There is something available for everyone at every level with this Apollo system. So I guess, do we want to start with the video presentation, or do
You know
we
what I'd like
wanna-
to do? I think first of
we want
all,
to maybe
maybe,
talk about how it works?
yeah, I think that would be a better start. I think
Mhm.
just to explain in generalities, I
What-
think most everybody in this industry kind of understands how compressed air works, right?
HVLP, high volume, low pressure.
Correct?
And what we are accustomed to in the paint booth is what that means for us with the coatings that we spray. That's anywhere from 15 to 30, 40 psi. That's what we're doing in our industry right now. And that is not what John is offering. He's taking high volume, low pressure to he's taking it to another level. So that's one of the key differences in what we're trying to demonstrate today.
So I think understanding the differences between how a compressed air works, gun works, and how a turbine gun works will help to sort of help you to understand a few of the reasons why we can gain so many positive spraying applicational experiences out of this, right? So basically, the way a typical compressor gun works is using your air compressor delivers a low pressure. So if I'm going to use HVLP or high volume low pressure guns as the example for comparison, but in essence, a standard compressor or compliant gun will do the same things. They just run at higher pressures. So for anybody out there, the EPA has coined the term HVLP or high volume low pressure to mean that at the air cap, which is this part in the front of the gun here, that we can't have more than 10 psi of actual air cap pressure. Okay, so that's where the line in the sand is between HVLP and what we call compliant or reduced pressure. Other brands have different terms for that, but basically, you're using a gun either with 10 psi or lower at the air cap or higher. If it's anything higher than 10 psi, it cannot have HVLP as the acronym, and it's denoted as a different style or type of gun. So everything that we're doing here is designed around HVLP, or as the acronym means, high volume, low pressure. Now, high volume in a compressed air world, as Jen stated, at the outset, you know, nowadays, I think your DV1s, your DeVilbiss DV1s are probably one of your biggest air hog guns there are out there now, which require about 30 CFM of air. Most HVLP guns, though, run at much lower volumes of pressure or volumes of air than 30 CFM, right?
I use an Iwata in our paint booth, in our standard paint booth, and my typical range is set to about 20 to 25 psi. That's where I'm at.
And so, and at 25 psi, you're still using only about 15 to 20 CFM of air, right? And the same with the DeVilbiss DV1, you're using usually around 29 psi, but the gun requires about 30 CFM of air from your compressor to be able to move to the actual spray, right? So to put that in comparison, the turbine system is producing more than double that amount of airflow, right? So we're using more than 65 CFM of air. And that's why, and I don't know if this will come through real well, but hopefully,
Background.
yeah, but hopefully you can see, this is a cutaway that I have of the gun. And as you can see, so this is your air passages here throughout the gun. And what that's showing you is that they're all about a half inch or bigger, right? And if I show you, hopefully you can see this again.
Yeah, it's coming through very clear. Looks nice.
Good, good. So you see how large the air cap holes are and so forth, right? So everything in the gun and the way it's been designed has been designed around using that volume of air and not so much the air pressure. So it's very similar to HVLP off your compressor, but we'll get to that in a second. What's happening is we're using a much lower cap pressure. So, 10 psi is the cap pressure for most compressor guns, but for a turbine system, our most powerful turbine system now puts out about 7 psi of air cap pressure. The system that Jen actually uses, our Power 5 system, realistically at the high pressure, we're using about 5 psi of air cap pressure. So the reason we can actually still get nice fine atomization with only 5 psi of air cap pressure is the fact that we can now utilize that over 60 CFM of air volume. And that's why it's important to understand that the volume as well as the pressure is used in the turbine system to be able to atomize. And by getting, so we need to get all that volume of air from the turbine through to the spray gun so that we have all the advantages of that low pressure soft spray. And what happens is by gently pushing those finely atomized particles out of the end of the gun, we don't shoot them out at such a high velocity that they bounce off the substrate and go away and, as an additional overspray. So we actually eliminate the bounce back because of the lower pressures, and that way you get a higher transfer efficiency. And that's why these systems in general are rated at over 80% transfer efficient. Now, as a byproduct of that, as Jen was pointing out here with this gun, we have this little air tube on the side, which is necessary to pressurize the cup. Because we don't have even 10 psi of air cap pressure, we can't create that siphon to pull the paint down into the nozzle. So we actually have to put pressure into the cup to push it down into the nozzle. And so when I add pressure to the cup, now it gives me a nice big wide fan pattern, gives me a nice even fluid rate, enables me to spray some of the thick heavy products like Jen was spraying in the demonstration we're going to show you here in a second. But thick heavy products like that, like latex paints and things like that, you can actually spray with these systems, but you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have a pressurized cup. So that's all part of the way the gun and the system works. So just remember that we're using that high volume of air at low pressure to atomize with, and that's why we can get such efficient results out of the system. So typically we can save over conventional HVLP 35 to 40% in paint.
Yeah.
And that's
much
typical
instead of this much to paint your substrate. It's
So that's typically how in general how we are accomplishing what we're doing through the turbine system, which uses an electric high-speed vac motor that spins at over 20,000 RPM to produce this low pressure, high volume air,
continuous pressure.
And that creates frictional heat, which we use then as the warm, dry air. So it actually helps to eliminate moisture in the air. So particularly here in Houston, where it's so humid, we have air that's coming out of the turbine with no moisture in it whatsoever. And you don't need inline filters. So there's no desiccant dryers, no inline filters at all that you need to clean up your air, because the air that comes from the turbine is always contaminant free, which is a huge plus, right? So you never ever have to worry about dirty air. You also never have to worry about running out of air, because the turbine never stores the air in a tank. And that's part of the reason why we get such clean air. Because if you remember, when you compress air, you're heating the air up, and then you put it into a tank where it cools down. And as air cools, it can't hold the moisture anymore, so it drops it in the tank. And that's when it pushes out into your air supply. And that's when you end up with all those dirty airlines that we all hate, right? But honestly, that's why the turbine system doesn't need any of this stuff. So I don't have to run any special lines, any filters or anything like that. I just plug it directly into the wall, plug my hose into it, put my paint in the gun, and I can spray. And guaranteed I'm never going to get any dirty air from that. So there's a lot of byproducts as well from it. Portability is another big byproduct.
It's a huge game changer.
We can take it virtually anywhere. We have people out in the field that use these systems on generators, small generators, like a 2,000 watt Honda generator will run our most powerful system all day long. So you no longer need to be where you need electricity or have a connection to. You can take a generator and you can spray out in the middle of nowhere if you need to.
Or you're sacrificing quality to do something out in the field. So now you're no longer sacrificing the quality of the paint job that you would normally get in a professional booth. Now it's with you wherever you want to go, plug and play system, and you can be in your booth and use this system. You can quietly be in your office occasionally with no one looking and use this system. It really makes a difference too. Model makers we know not all scale models are scaled down. Some are life size. So sometimes the project we're doing, it's not going to fit in our booth. Or we've done sub-assemblies and we've done all of our painting, and then through the process of doing our assembly, we've damaged this, we've scratched this, oh, this is showing, we can't have this show. You know, we run into those kind of problems all the time. So being able to have this available to you or to a painter, any step in the project, that is a huge dynamic. It allows you to work more dynamically. So if you have a corporate environment, and so oftentimes, you know, you have a painting department, it's not necessarily you are in full custody of what's happening through the project, but inevitably there's a change. There is something got lost, not enough parts were manufactured, customer has asked for a different additional form or function. So now you have these guys, now these parts are sitting in front of you, but you're queued in the paint booth, and everything else is going through except for this. Well, now you can keep everything caught up, and that's a huge, you know, it puts more control for you over a project that normally isn't there.
Yeah.
So
Good point. Yeah.
Mm.
So now that we've covered sort of the basic technology, if you will, and how the turbine works, let's move into some of the other points that we were going to talk about.
Well, does anyone have any questions regarding
Yeah.
what we're talking about with this turbine system? Do you want to see? Can we lift up?
We have the machine? I don't
The
think we brought one in, did we?
Yes, I saw a green machine sitting right there.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
So we can show you the,
It's
it's not light, but it is portable. So
There, we can just set this right here.
just set this in John's lap.
No problem.
This
It's
is
one of my babies.
this is it. That's there is your paint system. There's your paint booth.
Yep.
That's it. You have your paint line, your gun, your cup, and all of your air is right here. So
Yeah, don't get misconceived by the size of the box. It might be small, but it packs a lot of power, right? And I tell people, you know, the great thing about the turbine systems is that they never run out of air. Because it's a 100% duty cycle, it's not like your air compressor where it's 50% duty cycle. So unless you have a big enough air compressor to really have
Big
more air supply, right?
the tank sizes.
You've got to have that volume coming from your compressor in order to keep that going so that you're only running your compressor 50% of the time. Well, with the turbine system, it can run, well, it does run 100% of the time when you're using it. But the nice thing is it's because it's not storing air in a tank, you have no fluctuation. So once I set the pressure on this machine, it'll stay there whether I need to spray for 5 minutes or I have a big project that's going to take me 5 hours. It will always get a consistent pressure from this machine, and that's huge too, because a lot of people don't have enough air, and then if they spray a bigger project, now they're constantly waiting for their pressure to catch up and that. So you know, in maybe smaller shops that don't have the large enough air compressors, obviously, if you're in a big shop with a large compressor, then that's not going to be so much of a
And
problem.
sometimes with a small tank and the compressor is trying to catch up, you have kind of a high-low pulse coming out of the gun when you're painting. So your paint passes are kind of not, you're not
Consistent.
producing consistent coverage, is kind of stair-stepping along. So that can be very frustrating, especially if you're working out of your garage or working at home. I used to find that a lot with different airbrush compressors. You know, it was always very difficult to get a continuous airbrush performance. So that's not an issue with this system, even though there's no tank. That's not an issue.
Right. So the way the technology works is the motor's always continually spinning at that same RPM once you've set it. So we have if you can see here on there, there's a dial here on the machine that actually allows me to control the motor speed just by rotating this dial. And that's how I set the pressure. So I can change the pressure down to something really low if I'm just spraying like a dye or something very, very thin like that, versus I can change the pressure and raise it all the way up to the max for spraying heavy, thick materials like waterborne pigmented paints and things like that. So in fact, the video we're going to show you here in a few minutes will show you Jen spraying a heavy pigmented water-based product using the full power of the machine. But in that sense that you can keep that dialed in so that you have the right amount of pressure. So you're not using the same pressure for spraying a thin material like you would with a thick material. And that way you can then reduce your overspray and keep your efficiency even better. And that's part of what we teach. We have other system like this one here, which takes it to the next level and incorporates digital controls into the machine now as well, which allows you to have a pressure controlled environment that has a digital pressure control on it that's accurate to 1/10 of a PSI. So we have other models that are a little more sophisticated that gives you a little bit more control, even that. But even with the system like what Jen has, you still have a ton of control over the efficiency of the product and so forth.
Let's answer some questions.
Yeah, we got some questions here. So
Yeah, this is Michael.
yeah,
Actually, I think I'll defer and let Rick ask his question if he wants to ask it, or I can ask it if he doesn't want to talk at the moment. Looks like he typed it in, so.
Sure.
that's fine. I have no problem. Rick, do you want to say your
Yep.
question or do you want me to repeat it?
No, sure.
Okay,
Sure. I'll say
go
it.
right ahead.
All right. All right. I'm kind of new to painting, and I was introduced to it this last spring down in our auto body shop. And there are guys sanding all over the place. There's people painting inside of a booth. There's all this activity going on. What prevents your system from taking what people are sanding and putting it into the paint that I'm applying to my product?
Good question. So we mentioned not having to filter the air coming out of the machine going into your spray gun, and that's
Right.
great for oil and water and all that stuff. But that's a good point.
Your environment,
You
though.
you definitely need to filter the air going into the machine as well, and that's why we have what we call our QuadraClean filtering system that we've built in for these machines. And there's two filters like this one on the front here. And let me just see if I can.
General little catch-all.
What's that? Yeah, I know. So basically, there's 4 filters. There's one
Okay.
on the front and one on the back of the machine. And these filters consist of 2 different types of filtering. First, we have this foam mesh, which
Right.
I'm not sure how well that comes through,
There you go.
but it's basically just a thin piece of foam, which is a reticulated foam is what it's called. And it's really just designed to filter out your larger particulates. So your sand, to some extent, sanding dust, dirt, larger particulate. But then the real filtration is done with this automotive pleated filter that we put on the machine. And this is a paper pleated filter, just like you'd find on your car. And it's going to filter out all of that fine particulate. So any sawdust, any overspray, anything like that's going to go into this filter and get trapped with this filter. And there's, like I said, one on the front, one on the back. The reason we give you dual filters is because these motors are taking air in from 2 different directions. And the top of the motor is for the cooling of the motor, which is actually the filter on the back of my machine. And then the bottom of the motor is the air that goes out to your spray gun, which is the filter on the front of my machine here. And so we want to have both of those inputs, the air inputs, filtered equally so that I'm not only protecting my motor against anything getting sucked into it, but I'm also protecting the air that's going out to your spray gun so that you always have clean air too. Because yes, if I get dirt or something that gets sucked into this motor, it will get pushed out into the spray gun. It'll go right through the motor and right out into the gun. So we want to make sure we've got real good filters on there. And that's one of the big points, sorry, Sharon, about Apollo, because there are other brands out there and a lot of them just use a foam pad like our pre-filter, and that's all they're using to filter that out, which, it'll work to some extent, but any of your real fine particulate like sanding dust and overspray are going to go right through a filter like this and right into the motor. So that takes away from the motor life. It changes your pressures over time, and obviously it's just not good for the system in itself, besides the fact that you don't want contamination in your spray gun.
Now your environment, you're really SOL. That's something that you have to take on yourself to try and find a clean space, use fans to keep the air moving away from a part or to a part. Watch out for being in that airflow of dust from somebody that's standing outside the door. You know, sometimes if you're good with your shop, sometimes you can be like, hey, I need to spray this real quick. Could you just, you know, give me a minute? Just give me a minute. Let me get this sprayed, let it flash off, and then, you know, keep going with what you're doing. But so yeah, the environment is a different story, but the filtration on the system is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to be spraying in a dirty environment, period,
No.
right? I mean,
Right.
not only your system's going to be fine and the air coming out of your spray gun will be okay, but then all that trash is just going to come land right back on what you've just sprayed anyway. So at that point, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So you always want to try to spray in a clean environment if you can.
If you can't spray in a clean environment, the next best thing is a big spray bottle of water, and you soak everything around you. You soak the floor, you soak the walls, you soak the table, you soak everything. You soak yourself so that you're not having fibers come flying off of your shirt or your hair. Yeah, when I'm having to do a really big surface, a clear coat, anything that's like, oh my gosh, if I get crap in this, I'm done. I have to do it again.
Mhm.
So yes, everything is getting sprayed with a spray bottle. Everything gets wet, and then so dust is more likely
Mhm.
to get trapped in these wet surfaces rather than go to the part.
Okay. Yeah, in at our shop we do have 3 paint booths, you know, where it's like close the door and the air is moving in there and the whole 9 yards. Um, so related to that then, where do I put this green box relative to my spray booth? Is it
Good
in the
question.
booth with me? Is it outside of the booth?
So the machine is not explosion proof.
Okay,
So it has to be outside the booth.
okay, got
So,
it.
you know, if you're using an open face booth, then that's not a problem. You can just set the machine around the corner of the booth and run the hose around the corner.
Right,
But if you're running in a fully enclosed booth, that now becomes a little bit of an issue because you can't have the machine in the booth and you got to be able to close the door in order for the fans to work and everything else. So what we have developed is a little booth kit that you can then take this machine, and because it's so small, we can actually put some magnets on the bottom of it and we can attach it right to the side of your booth. And we have a little 3-foot short section of hose that we run from the machine right through the booth. We'll drill a hole through the booth wall and we'll plumb it into your booth just like you have with your compressed air. So you
okay,
walk into the booth, you have a quick connect on the inside of your booth wall that you plug your hose onto, and now you have a turbine system that you can use inside your booth, perfectly legal, and not have to worry about any of the explosion proof issues that come up with spraying solvent-based coatings.
okay, cool.
So yeah, we've thought about that. We've been selling these systems now into the automotive industry for about 10 years. So a lot of this stuff that you guys are going to benefit from have come as a result of us, you know, working with that industry and working with the limitations of what we can do with the turbine system, where we can place it, and working around a lot of the fire laws and things like that. So we've worked to the point where we've got that all figured out, and so real easy to set it up onto any kind of booth for the most part and instantly be able to use it. In fact, some of our larger systems, we've even got a remote control that you can put in the mixing room if you have a mixing room and be able to control the pressure in that from the mixing room. Because typically on those kinds of systems, like in a body shop or something like that, you'll have the machine sitting around the backside of the booth where it's not in a very convenient place. And you don't want your painter walking from the mixing room around to the backside of the booth to set his pressure. So we've come up with a remote control unit that connects to the main body of the unit through a Cat5 cable, and now I can control the pressure and everything from the mixing room and not have to inconvenience the painter.
Okay.
So there's a lot of little things, but with the smaller systems, you don't have to worry about any of that because they're obviously much more portable and easier to get to. So plumbing it in a convenient place on your booth would be key to doing that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to hog all the time.
No, that's
But
good. That's a good point that you brought up. I was going to
Mhm.
mention that anyway.
I had no
Right.
idea.
right, so for our booth, and we're a training facility, they have 4 people that are in the paint booth spraying at the same time. So would we have to have 4 of the individual? Okay.
Yes, you
Yeah, I
would.
just wasn't sure if we could all like, branch off of one, or we got to do it's a
So
one-to-one
in
thing.
some cases you can. So remember, it comes back to the limiting amount of air pressure that we have.
Right.
Because we only have a finite amount of air pressure, I can't increase the pressure beyond what I normally do. With your air compressor, if you wanted to run multiple guns off it, you can increase the pressure in the line and split it out and not have a problem, or just run 2 separate lines off your compressor and control it that way.
Right.
We can do that with the turbine system, but we're splitting that finite amount of air pressure that we have. And so it will work fine if I'm spraying fairly thin materials, right? So if I was just spraying dyes or stains or some kind of really, like an automotive base coat even,
Yeah.
I could spray that and I could split the air off of Jen's turbine with no problem and run 2 spray guns out of it. Now, I'm not going to be able to set the pressure differently on those lines. They're both going to be using the same pressure,
Mhm.
but it would be able to work in that situation. When you come to spray clear or some heavier product like that, though, now you're going to need all the pressure going to the spray gun from that one machine, and
Yep.
that's where you would run into a limitation. So if you had 4 people wanting to spray heavier materials all in the booth at the same time, in order to do that, yes, you would need 4 separate systems for running
Okay.
those, give that pressure.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions before we move along?
No, I think we're good. I've got
Okay.
1 or 2, but I can save them to the end. So
All right, what's our next point?
Okay.
Do the video.
Yeah, so maybe right now would be a good time to show the video, and then we can maybe that'll pick up some more questions as you guys watch the video, and then we've got some other things we can talk about here after too.
This
Sounds
is a
good.
very basic video. I apologize now ahead of time. So, all right.
She's way underestimating herself. She did a great job. So
Sounds good. Let's see it. So I've currently got you spotlighted, but it looks like, yeah, you should be able to take over. There we go.
Okay,
Can you see it?
everybody see the video? Okay.
Yes.
All
And
right.
then if you can't hear sound, someone just chime in, but I believe I got it.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Think Outside the Booth demonstration of the Apollo HVLP spray system. I'll be painting with the Apollo Power 5 VS turbo spray system. It is one of a family of different turbine systems that Apollo offers, ranging from hobbyist to professional, but you can expect all the systems to have this similar interface. This is Apollo's UltraFlex air hose. It's a very ruggedly designed aluminum hose with quick disconnects. It is not a standard hose. This is designed by Apollo for their turbine systems. One setup is very straightforward. The fan adjustment is a ring at the air cap. The paint adjustment is a typical screw at the rear. You can dial it down to a fine line or open it up to all 16 inches of fan. I kind of walk it back and forth until I have the fan and volume that I need for the project. This gun is set up with a disposable cup system, and Apollo can outline the different cup sizes and adapters needed. I'll be spraying a water-based heavy-filled paint that's going to need all 10 psi from the Power 5 turbo system. Now understand that in a typical HVLP paint booth setup, you would need 30 to 40 psi to apply a coating like this. The secret that makes this work is the fact that the cup itself is under pressure, and that's the game changer. I think one of the most unique features of this system is its portability. It can really go anywhere. It has a plug-and-play setup, and all you need is a 120 volt outlet. This is my volunteer model for our demonstration, courtesy of the model shop I work for, ProTech Models. From here, we can paint as we normally would, with typical overlapping layers. You can see the coating is very well atomized. It's very even using this system. The model was a lot of fun to shoot, and I really enjoy working with this system. It does not disappoint. It is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting is you don't see any overspray on the filters. Yeah.
All the turbine systems have this handy hold on top of the case for your gun or air nozzle. This is the standard cup that comes with the Apollo paint gun. You can really see the air pressure line going to the paint cup. And for small parts, painting is no problem. You're using less air pressure, so you don't have to be overly paranoid about carting parts up.
Oh, that was it?
That's it.
Oh, I didn't realize it ended that abruptly.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that invoke any questions that you guys may have from watching that process and seeing that? I mean, I think the first thing that I noticed was the lack of overspray getting sucked into the booth, and that's one of the things I think that is really noticeable when you see the system work as opposed to conventional sprayers. There's just not the clouds of paint coming off the project that you're spraying and getting sucked into the booth.
Yeah, for sure. That was pretty noteworthy to see. And yeah, it looks like a really nice system you've got there and everything. Definitely, Jen, thank you for the video as well, doing the video work on that and everything. That's very cool.
So yeah, so Apollo has, like I said, we've specifically designed certain elements into all of the whole system, and then we've given a lot of thought to how we produce everything from the machine to the hose to the gun. And everything is paired together in a certain way so that it gives you the ability to achieve the best results that are possible. And so Jen started talking about the air hose and so forth. Our air hoses are not just one section of air hose, which would be real easy to do, but no, we make them out of 3 sections of air hose. And the reason we do that, they're all 3 different types of hose that we pair together to give you the finisher a better experience. So we want to have the main body hose is a 25-foot rigid PVC hose that has a reinforced helix in it. And the reason we want that is so that when you're pulling it around the shop and you accidentally step on it or something like that, it's not going to be like a garden hose, which would just flatten under the weight of your foot and pinch off your air supply and change your whole pressure.
Or rot.
Or rot.
Or dry.
Yep. So that's the reason we use that main body hose. But then that hose is fairly stiff, so you really wouldn't want to be holding that in your hand at all. So that's when Jen mentioned the 4-foot, the flexible end. We've designed this special flexible end, which is just 4 feet that goes from the gun down to the floor, basically, so that it's long enough to give you that lightweight uh, feeling on your gun, and you're not holding all that weight and the stiffness of that rigid hose in your hand, and you have a much more flexible surface to be able to get into corners or into tighter spots and things that you wouldn't be able to with a stiff, heavy hose. And then the final section that we put on is for the turbine end to handle the heat that comes from the machine. And we need sort of have a type of a heat sink hose, if you will. So we put a 3-foot section of that on the end for the turbine. Again, because the PVC hose wouldn't be suitable for connecting directly to the machine itself. So we've put a lot of thought into how we design our hoses, and the reason that we put them all together in that way so that we can give you the benefit of having the very best hose out there possible. And it even comes down to even the connectors. You know, most of the connectors that we use on the hose to connect to the gun and so forth are for the most part standard garden hose quick connects. So you could go down to Home Depot.
I really didn't know.
And no, I'm quite happy to tell people, you know, a lot of times, you know, you go to Home Depot and you see the little brass quick connects there that you can add to your garden hose. Well, they're not any different than the quick connects that we're using on our turbine. The difference is we make all of those things custom by ourselves, and we make them out of aluminum alloy so that they're half the weight of a brass connector. And so all these little things add up to the weight of the hose. And so our hose, even though it's 32 feet long, only weighs less than 4 pounds, the entire length of the hose. And that's with all the connectors and everything. That's about half the weight of any of our competitors' hoses. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into even something as simple as the air hose. And we talk about the spray gun. There's a lot of different features. You know, I thought, does anybody have any questions on the hose, first of all, before I go on more? That's fairly intuitive.
Not specifically about the hose, but I did have just a general question about maintenance on the system. Are there any specific considerations that we would want to keep in mind for maintenance on this system versus a traditional, you know, spray system?
For the turbine itself, and then for the gun. So the gun, this is probably one of the most favorite guns I've ever used. I've used Geo, Seta, Iwata, DeVilbiss, all these different manufacturers. They all have something that's very similar in a sense that the chamber where air and paint kind of commingle is a construct of different machined parts kind of press fitted together and everything like that. So when you're cleaning the gun, you clean the cup, that's pretty straightforward. You clean the channel that the cup goes into the gun, that's very straightforward. But this chamber, this internal chamber, is always a nightmare, especially if you're using a paint that has a catalyzer in it and you're trying to get as much paint out in as much time as you can get before that paint catalyzes in your gun. And I've taken that probably too far occasionally. So it's been difficult to get into all these strange little nooks and crannies that are like these traps. It's like they made traps inside this chamber. This particular chamber is so easy to clean, is so straightforward. Your typical pipe cleaning brushes that you can get with a straightforward gun cleaning kit. I mean, super easy to take apart, put back together. All of the machined surfaces, all of the screw surfaces are moved very nicely. Nothing is binding. You don't have to worry about catching the needle on the trigger mechanism that you can do with some paint guns. It's just a great, yeah, that's extremely difficult to see.
Yeah,
That's extremely
I was hoping it might come up a little better, but it's all dark in there.
It's back. It's this
You know, I think a lot of what you're experiencing, Jen, is a result of just the overall design of the spray gun. And I think a lot of the reasons it's a lot easier to clean, not only because we use high quality materials like stainless steel, but then other brands like your Setas and they also use the same quality of materials. But the difference is that because we're using large passageways and you know, again, down to the air cap and you know how big the holes are, and it just makes it that much easier to clean because the passageways are bigger and larger and so forth, and everything is just easier. You're not dealing with a lot of tiny little holes and things like that, right? So I think that's part of it. Plus the design on the gun is very simple too.
It's very user friendly. There are some unique qualities to the gun that I've never encountered before. Specifically the way the fan mechanism works. Those that are familiar with HVLP systems, there's typically a screw that adjusts your fan width, and then a screw that adjusts the volume of paint that you're pushing through the gun. This has a control ring around the paint cap it's extremely sensitive. So you can get the size of the pattern that you need specific for what you're shooting easily and consistently. It's different, but it's super easy to navigate.
So maybe I can explain a little bit more about how that works. So the fan control is controlled by these parts in the front of the gun. And this is all typically air. So what happens is the air comes through the back of this control, and hopefully you guys can see this. Does that come through okay, guys?
Yeah, it's fairly clear.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you, so this is with the air cap fully wide open, right? So you've got all these holes up here. So what happens is, let me just take this apart real quick. So I've got all these parts. This is my air distributor. Okay. I've got the air holes that come around the center plus the center hole. And then I have this other part here, which I'm going to hold that in the black there, the black part. That's a little better. See, it has these two slots at the top and bottom. And so this sits on the back of this part here. And as I rotate this, well, I got to use the ring too. There we go. So as I rotate this, it opens and closes those slots.
Oh, that's difficult to see.
Yeah, there you go.
Your explanation is pretty open.
Can you see that? So as I
Yeah, we're
rotate
seeing
this,
it
so
okay.
what I'm doing is I'm feeding the air into the back of the air cap here, and the air at the top and at the bottom of the outside edges here feeds the air into the ears of the air cap. Okay. The center holes around the center here are feeding the air to the center hole of the air cap. Okay. So by restricting the air that goes around these outer holes and pushing more of the air through the smaller center holes, I decrease the size of the fan pattern. And as I increase the amount of air going to these outer holes or increase the air going to the ears of the air cap, I increase the size of my fan pattern. So that's how it works. It may seem a lot more complicated than it really is. But in practice, as Jen said, I can adjust my fan pattern with a 1/4 inch turn of this knob or this control ring. I can control it from just little tiny airbrush line all the way out to the full wide fan pattern. And so what a lot of people do is they actually count the little notches on the side of the ring here, and they adjust it according to how many notches. So I think from memory, it's about 6 or 8 notches from full wide open to full closed.
Okay.
So might be another little point.
What did you just say that I thought was really important? Okay. So, 2, the fact that you can dial this down so tight and open it up so much, this becomes the gun for everything. If that's what you wanted, this is the gun for everything. It can handle some of the things that maybe you were doing with an airbrush, and it can handle what you would typically need for large projects, all in the same gun. Very versatile.
Yeah, you can get down to probably about a 1/4 of an inch little dot with it. So it's not going to airbrush, but it's going to get you as close to airbrushing as you can possibly get with a standard full-size gun.
But I mean, some of us aren't necessarily using the airbrush in a traditional sense. We're using that airbrush to take care of problems that we've created
Touch-ups and things like
before
that.
needing to give that over to the customer. So this kind of becomes that, oh, okay, this is the chaos gun. This is taking care of what's happening in the shop before the customer gets hold of it.
Gotcha. Oh, good point.
If I
Any
could
questions
interrupt.
on?
Yeah.
Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we got maybe 10 minutes left. So I don't know if there's any other key points that you guys want to hit. I know I've got at least 1 or 2 other questions, and some of the other attendees may as
Yeah,
well.
let's
But
make sure we cover your questions then. Let's go that route first, and then if we have more time, we can always throw some more out there. But we've really kind of hit you guys with the main key points, I think, what the features and benefits of the systems are. You got one other thing?
One more really good point is if you're building a model shop, you've recently moved, you're looking to spec out what you need for painting projects, this can be a cost-saving system because you're not necessarily having to get the compressors, the air cleaners, dryers, tank. Some of the other features, of course, will be standard, the fire suppression and things like that go along with a standard booth. Yes, you can't get away from that, but everything else, this is such a self-contained system. It makes good sense. It's just really good sense.
Very cool.
All right, so what questions do you have for us?
All right. Well, the one that was coming to mind for me was in our shop. I work in a corporate, design shop, or, an electronics company. So we do a lot of texturing of parts with our paint
Okay.
gun, where we're attempting to actually create either a fine, like almost, I don't know, almost trying to emulate what would come out of, an acid etch in a tool, but with
M1,
paint.
M2, M5,
Yeah, exactly. So
M7.
we frequently are relying on our guns to be able to achieve those everywhere from a fine mist effect, very dry, to try to matte out a part, all the way up to like some kind of thick, globby, over texture on things. So I'm curious, would we
Right.
find a gun like this would be, how is it going to do with texture applications like that? Is it going to be easier, harder, about the same?
It's going to be different, I think, right?
It is a little different, but you can still dial your air pressure down to where it's not atomizing nearly as well it normally would. And that's the difference to doing those special effects. Stippling it's all about your air pressure control. And so yes, it's a little trial and error, the same as you would do any spray out when you're trying to match your acid etch texture and things like that. And your distance from the part may be a little different, but I've tightened up my paint to where it's very little paint, and I've opened up my air pressure, and I've matted out surfaces that need to be more matte finish. I think it sprays gloss very well. It sprays matte finishes extremely well. Then for the special effects, the stippling, it's about opening up your paint, dialing down your air pressure to getting that special ratio of one versus the other, and getting those different droplet sizes. Yes, it's got the capability. It's totally there. It's totally intact. Yeah.
And that's why you'd want to have a system that has the ability to be able to control the pressure from the machine itself. A lot of systems out there are just fixed pressure machines where you just turn them on and what you get is what you get. And that's where you have a problem with something like that. It's when you want to get these custom finishes that doesn't allow you to be able to do that. Yeah. So to be able to, like Jen said, just to be able to reduce your pressure, maybe put a larger needle and nozzle in it. And that's one of the things that's unique about Apollo 2 is we actually make 7 different nozzle and needle sizes and 8 different air caps. So we have a huge variety of different abilities, if you will, because we've designed this one spray gun to be able to spray a myriad of different types of finishes, from automotive to woodworking to, counter resurfacing, and a lot of that stuff that you're talking about. Well, spray tanning as well. Yeah, that's another unique application. But so yes, you can spray UV sunless tanning solutions with these systems too. That's actually the preferred way to do it now. But the joking aside, those system the ability all comes from the versatility of the spray gun and the versatility of being able to adjust your pressures. If you can adjust your needle nozzle cap pressure, you can change your fluid control and the air pressure on your machine. You can do everything that you can do with a conventional system.
And I will tell you straight up that if the gun was of a poor quality, it would make this system useless to me, because it's all about what you can do with the paint. It's not for us in terms of model making and doing special effects and doing special finishes and coatings. We need something that we can trick. We need to be able to use it in a way that's not necessarily marketed. So the capability is totally there. It's a very strong product and super intuitive. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right,
I did want,
Bruce, Rick.
did we have another
Oh, I
question?
was just curious if any, I was just calling some folks out. Just thought I'd see if anybody else had questions they wanted to throw in before we wrapped up.
Okay, so when you were painting that model, did you change the fan shape to try, like, there's an armpit that was on the thing, and I think that would be
Mhm.
an absolute nightmare to try to get underneath that armpit. So did you change that to be more like a spot in order to do that?
So when I have, well, so you already have a very low air pressure. And typically when you have internal corners and spaces that are going to be trapping air on a conventional HVLP system, you're spraying and the particles of air hit the air that's already in that space and get pushed back. They don't deposit on the substrate that you're painting. So, but with the lower air pressure, that's not a problem. Typically, what I would have to do with a traditional HVLP is I would dial my air pressure way, 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 way low and just kind of inch into the armpit and paint it out. This was super easy to get into those nooks and crannies. I actually didn't make any adjustments.
Hmm.
So um, I when I'm painting hard corners, hard internal structures like that, I typically will throw paint into it as opposed to painting out of it. I go into it. It's difficult to explain what I'm actually doing. It's taken a lot of time to figure it out. But yes, typically you would have to really reduce your air pressure so that the air pressure isn't pushing the paint away from that internal feature. This it's already very low pressure. About the only thing that I might do is dial my paint down a little bit so that I'm not overloading a section, because I'm not necessarily spraying across. I'm just kind of spot
Right.
hitting. So I got to be quick on the trigger, and but I don't necessarily have to worry about my air pressure and having that uh
Kicking out.
overspray on
Right.
those internal corners. Oof. No, not a problem. Not a problem. It's not there.
A lot of that is just a byproduct of the low pressure that we have, and some of those, so a lot of the things that you now have a technique for to overcome will just become a more norm, and you won't have to think about those things anymore, just because of the low pressure will solve a lot of those issues for you just naturally, and you won't have to come up with a different technique to be able to apply to that one area to be able to do that. And that's actually, bringing back the UV sunless tanning industry. It was kind of interesting when you were spraying that mannequin. I was thinking of, that's exactly what I was thinking about, because that's one of the features that makes the system so applicable for that industry. And that, people don't, well, not only just even, but, a lot of people don't think about it, but, people do these bodybuilding contests, and the backstage behind the bodybuilding contests are these ladies that are spray tanning these people before they go up on stage. And a lot of times they're contouring and spray and shading in around the especially in your abdominal area where
Right.
you've got your typical six pack of muscles and that kind of stuff,
Right.
and they will actually highlight that stuff to sort of make it look bigger and stand out more. So they are sort of artificially changing the way the person looks as they go before they go out on stage. So yes, there's all kinds of different like custom effects and things that you can do as a result of just having this low pressure that you've never had before.
Mm.
Just makes a lot of things easier. I don't know if a lot of you guys spray metallics a lot, but if you do a lot of metallics, silver metallics are probably the hardest to spray. And particularly in automotive, we challenge guys to try and make our system model, because we don't even have to think about how we apply metallics anymore. They just automatically disperse beautifully. Don't even have to think about it, because think about what happens when you do a drop coat. You're pulling back, you're cutting back your pressure. Well, guess what? All of the coats I've just done with that same material have all been sprayed at much lower pressure than what you're doing with your drop coat. So now everything is just evenly dispersing the minute I spray it, rather than having to go back and do the special effect to make it hide. And so these are a lot of things you'll find that as you get used to the system, it'll actually make painting easier, than what you've had to do before, where you've had to have all these workarounds to get around some of the intrinsic problems that are come out with compressed air.
Yep.
One of the last things I wanted to touch on real quick before Bruce, and then we'll grab your question. But you may be wondering, you know, Jen's holding up the gun here with a fairly large cup on it. And most of you may not want to use that big a cup because maybe your projects are smaller. You know, that's great if you're spraying a big mannequin or larger projects. You know, you can get a lot of work done.
I only ever use probably this much paint in this cup, really.
Right. So we actually have 4 different size paint cups that we make for the gravity cup. We make a small little 3-ounce cup. So if you're doing small little work that only requires a couple of ounces of material, you can just put that little small 3-ounce cup on the gun and only have that. And that makes the footprint then everything much, much smaller for those smaller, tighter jobs. And then you've got the bigger cups all the way out too. So where if you do have a large job and you do have to continue, you know, spray a whole large surface, you're not going to have to stop and refill the cup over again too.
And the 3M disposable systems that
That's
are
a great
available
setup
out
too,
there.
yeah.
There is going to be a special adapter that gets screwed to the cup neck, and then the cup is a different cup unit is used with that disposable system that is also designed to be pressurized. So you're still using the gun the same. It's just now you have that extra, that quick benefit of using disposable cups. You still need to clean your gun, but now you're not fighting all of that paint residue coming from your cup.
Point.
Mhm.
Yep. So then, you know, and then 3M makes a myriad of different size cups and bags. So it uses all the same lids and liners. And then you just have the outer cup that 3M makes that you need to get for this system, which allows you to pressurize the cup and use it that way. But so yeah, and Bruce, you had a question.
Do you have any facilities around the country where people can come and try that out?
We have certain places like, yeah, here in Houston, you know, you've got Jen. I mean, this is a great spot. Southern California, you're welcome to come by the factory and, you know, with an appointment, and we can certainly work with you at the factory. And we do have certain, you know, some distributors around the country that are familiar and able to be able to just demonstrate products and so forth. So really depends on which geographical area you're in the country. But most of the major spots we do have people available that can show you the systems using in a live environment and be able to see it. And then, yeah, we go to trade shows a lot. We're going to a big woodworking show here coming up in August in Atlanta. And whenever we go to the trade shows, we always have live demonstrations going on because we're one of the few products that can actually spray paint in a trade show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the overspray.
Yeah. So even like we do SEMA every year as well. And when we go to SEMA, we spray we're, you know, pretty much the only paint company or manufacturing equipment company that's at the show spraying paint in the booth.
Thanks.
So please.
Was there another
I
question?
said thank you.
Oh, no worries. You're welcome. Any other questions that anybody has before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. If anybody has any questions, we have a lot of our information is available on our website at hvlp.com. So that's real easy to remember. Feel free to reach out to either Jen or ourselves. We'll make sure we include our contact information for you guys to be able to contact us. And yeah, we'd love to answer any questions and show the modelers how we can get the great benefits from the Apollo spray systems.
If you think of something that you want to see in a demonstration, of course, you know, you can hit me up. I can set something up in my booth back at the shop, and we can just kind of set something up through video, or we can do even a video chat live. So if you're wanting to kind of work through a problem or a process, we can just do the process and see what it does.
We'll put your
Sounds good.
information on our website because the people that will watch this later, when they go to click the video, we'll have some way for them to see, find your guys' contact information.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess that's about it. Did you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up for the day?
No, I just really appreciate everybody's opportunity, the time to be able to present to the group, and thank you very much for allowing us to do this. And we're privileged to be able to bring our equipment to this niche audience, and we're really looking forward to working with you guys to bring the benefits of our electric painting systems to the modeling groups.
All right. Well,
And I
thank you
really
all.
I hope this encourages everyone to go out there and don't be scared. Just sling some paint.
Yeah, try it.
And see what happens.
Lots of great videos out there too. So check out a lot of stuff on YouTube, and there's people posting stuff every day.
Well, thank you three absolutely for your time and for taking the time to put that video together and everything. We definitely appreciate all that and you
pleasure.
taking the time today to spend with us. So everybody have a great day, and we'll talk with you later.
Do the same.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.